Hey there. Let's talk about variables. I hope you're taking notes at this point. There is a sheet in your packet for you to take notes right next to the independent and dependent variable worksheet. So let's talk about variables. A variable is something that can change. We have two kinds of variables that we deal with in experiments. One kind is the independent variable. One kind is the dependent variable. An independent variable is often, or sometimes, especially in a textbook, referred to as something as the manipulated variable. What that means is it's the thing that the researcher can choose to change. A dependent variable is what is called in the textbook as a responding variable. And what that means is you changed something that was an independent variable, and this dependent or responding variable changes because of that. So an independent variable is a factor or something in an experiment that can be changed. A dependent variable is a factor or something in an experiment that changes because something else changes. I know that's a lot of words. Feel free to abbreviate. Go ahead and pause this so you can catch up with what you need to write. Start it when you're ready again. All right, so the next thing you need to think about is examples of things that you can see in an experiment that are independent variables. For instance, sometimes if you change the temperature of something, there's going to be a responding change to the material. So for instance, if you change the temperature of ice, one of the responding variables is going to be the state of that ice. It's going to turn into a liquid, or if you heat it up enough, a gas. Other examples of things that can change as independent variables, you can change the amount of time a reaction is happening. You can change the weight of an object if you were testing the bounciness of it. You can change the height of a hill if you're driving a car or talking about the speed of something. You can change the number of objects that you're testing, or you can change the number of objects in a container. And you can change the size of something. So you could have a balloon that is the size of a basketball or a balloon that's the size of a baseball and see if there's a difference in your experiment. Examples of dependent variables could be speed. If you change the height of a hill and roll a ball down it, it's going to be faster if it's a really high or tall hill. Now notice that time could potentially be an independent variable, or it could be a dependent variable. So you can't just say that temperature is always going to be an independent variable. Sometimes it's a dependent variable. So an example of time as a dependent variable would be how long you can hold your breath. If you were breathing out for a long period of time before you take in that breath and hold your breath, you can actually hold your breath longer than if you kind of hyperventilate before. If you go like you've been running and then hold your breath, you're not going to be able to hold your breath for as long as if you were just sitting quietly and able to breathe naturally and then take in a big long breath. Go ahead and try it right now if you want to. I'll wait. All right, I think we're ready to keep going. So let's look at an experiment where you might be examining both an independent and a dependent variable, one you may have done frequently yourself at home. That would be making toast. Everybody has their ideal, this is the right amount of toasted a bread should be. I like a slightly darker toast bread. My mom likes a slightly lighter toasted bread. So along our lives, we've figured out what's the right combination of factors to make that happen. So independent variables, things that I can control that would make the right toast for me, would be the amount of time it's present in the toaster. Another variable would be the setting that I put on the side, although sometimes those toaster settings are misleading and they don't really work. Another example would be the type of bread that I put in there. Or if you've ever put toast down into the toaster and it pops up and you forgot about it and you have to put it back down to heat it up again, that would be another variable. How many times have I pushed that toaster button so that it toasts again? Potentially, what type of toaster oven or toaster am I using? So there's a lot of independent variables. What's dependent is the amount of toastiness my bread ends up being. All right, now I want you to switch over to your worksheet. That's right, the one that looks like this. So please pay attention. In the top part here, all you need to do is you need to underline the independent variable in each of these statements and circle the dependent variable. So here's an example. The effects of salt water on the height of corn plants. So the independent variable, the thing that we can choose to add more or less of, is the salt water. So I would underline that. The dependent variable is the thing that changes because of it. The more salt water I add, I'm going to give you a hint. The lower the height of my corn plants. It's going to make it grow shorter. It doesn't actually shrink it, but it won't grow as tall. So I would come along and circle that dependent variable. So take a couple minutes and do the rest of these, and all you need to do is underline the independent variable and circle whatever you think is the dependent variable, the thing that changes. It doesn't matter how much, I can't control actually the height of the corn plants, and if I even could, it still wouldn't change the amount of water, salt water present. So you want to read it and figure out which one changes because something else changed. Go ahead and pause it, and when you're ready for the next section, turn this back on. All right, so the next section here where it says in the following examples, you're going to still underline the independent variable and circle the dependent variable, but you're also going to list two potential variables that would change the experiment that an experimenter would have to consider. So in this first example, if skin cancer is related to ultraviolet light, then people with a high exposure to UV light will have a higher frequency of skin cancer. So underlining the independent variable is probably not going to be cancer. I can't control that separately. But if I change the amount of light they are exposed to, this ultraviolet light, that's our independent variable. And of course, the thing that changes is the skin cancer, so you can circle that. You don't have to circle it in both places, just one. So what are some other things that could change the amount of skin cancer somebody's exposed to? In one case, the amount of sun tanning they do. Sun tanning actually exposes your skin to ultraviolet light. So you can write that down. Sun tanning, that's fine. And you don't have to write me a full sentence or anything. The other thing that you can record here would potentially be what? Maybe exposure to x-rays, depending upon what's getting x-rayed. Any other variables you guys have heard about for skin cancer? There's one more I can throw in there for you. Genetics. Some people have a genetic predisposition to skin cancer. All right, I'm going to let you do the rest of them on your own, or rather with the group of people you're sitting with. So turn this back on when you're ready. All right, for this next section here, you're going to continue to underline the independent variable and circle the dependent variable. Then you're going to finish this sentence with whichever variable is missing. So if this section here has an independent variable, you underline it, whichever is the independent variable, or you circle it, and then you write the rest of the sentence. So let's look at this first sentence together. If reptile speed, so how fast a reptile like a snake would go, is related to air temperature, then finish the sentence. So let's look for the independent variable. I think that the air temperature is going to be the thing that can change. Now, it's okay if you personally can't change it, but you know that the air temperature goes up and down with the seasons and the time of day. If you had a reptile in a tank, you could absolutely increase the air temperature using a lamp. The thing that's going to change is the speed. So when it gets warmer, a reptile can move faster until it gets too hot and then they slow down again. So go ahead and finish that sentence. If reptile speed is related to air temperature, then I might say on a cold day, the reptiles are slow. Go ahead and work on sentences 2, 3, 4, and 5 with people in your group. Turn this back on when you're ready for the final section. All these sentences that you've been looking at with independent and dependent variables, these are all examples of hypotheses. So this final section, I want you to write me 2 hypotheses, one right up here and one down here, that you cannot study in school. Maybe it's because the thing you would maybe study is too big, or it's extinct, like let's say you wanted to study dinosaurs, or if it was too big, maybe you want to study rockets, or because you don't have a whole bunch of ponies. So it doesn't have to be something practical. It can be kind of silly. That's okay. But you're going to show me that you can identify the independent variable and the dependent variable in your hypothesis. So an example that I might use, which you can't use because I'm giving it to you, I'm not going to use the if statement. I'm going to rewrite mine. Mine's going to say a snail travels faster on tinfoil than sand. That is my hypothesis. So if we look for the independent variable, is that going to be the travel time, the speed, or is that going to be the thing that it travels on, tinfoil or sand? I can change what that snail is going to travel on just by setting it on tinfoil or setting it on sand. And I'm going to time it and see how fast that snail travels, let's say a 1 foot distance. So the speed, faster, is going to be the dependent variable, and the thing it travels on is going to be the independent variable. Now you can't use this one because I gave it to you, but on 1 and 2, you're going to write your own. All right, good luck.